Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello, you're listening to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to West Lothian's finest football team, Livingston Football Club, and proudly sponsored by Starnet Apparel. My name's Angus, and today I'm joined by Euan. Euan, a slightly better result at the weekend, right?
Yeah, but I still have that Ross from Friends vibe coming onto the podcast. They're just, hi. It's just, it's another week. What is it now? 686 minutes without a goal. Yeah, you're right. It's ended a run of results. It's stopped the rot. But we'll obviously come on to talk about it. It still wasn't a spectacle for the fans. That I'm not going to lie, I don't think a lot of fans are feeling excited after that 0-0 with Kilmarnock, if I'm brutally honest.
I'm absolutely stunned to hear this, Euan. I can't believe that this hasn't completely changed your tune. In all honesty, I'm really stunned.
Oh yeah, before I came on this, I was reveling in that the sheer excitement of that 0-0. It was
I
a
watched it
0-0
back
for
and
the
everything.
ages, that game. It'll go down in El Plastico history as a contest. But yeah, it wasn't great. But what about yourself, mate? How was your weekend?
As we're going to go on to talk about, my weekend wasn't filled with great Livingston showings, I guess. So that's kind of dampened kind of spirits. But we're getting closer to Christmas and stuff like that. So that means that I've had a quieter weekend because trying to rein back on the spending sprees and stuff like that. But yeah, as usual, we're going to get into all the action as well. But as always, you can search for Talk Livi on your preferred podcast streaming sites where you can follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can also catch all our episodes that we've done to date.
We'll kick things off by discussing Livy's draw with Kilmarnock as the Lions' penalty woes returned in El Plastico.
Our ladies' side were in action for the final time in 2023 as they fell to a 1-0 defeat to league leaders Queen's Park.
And finally, we'll look ahead to our away doubleheader as we first of all make the trip north to Pittodrie to take on Aberdeen before a daunting trip to Glasgow to take on Celtic.
The Lions managed to stop the rot of defeats, but it could have been so much more as Bruce Anderson missed a late penalty, meaning the game finished 0-0 against Kilmarnock. Euan, what are your initial thoughts on the team?
Well, it was another one where we looked at the starting 11, and I think it was one change from last week, which was Jamie Brandon dropped out for Joel Newbley coming in at right wing back. And we spoke about the kind of glare across each other at the stadium bar before the Hibs game when we saw the team. And it was, yeah, kind of a repeat of that. We saw Joel's performance at St Mirren playing at right wing back. It wasn't great. And to be honest, I don't think he was particularly involved in the game at the weekend there either, playing in that position. I just, again, it goes back to that square pegs, round holes. But it was a really drab contest. We started off fairly brightly in the sense that, worked the ball forward early doors, and Iobelai had a kind of pot shot from the edge of the box, which Will Dennis has made a pretty comfortable save from. But there was a real lack of quality, and the manager did touch on it. I think the maybe for fans in the stands, maybe didn't quite appreciate the conditions. It was very windy. I was out coaching in it in the morning, and there was quite a kind of swirling wind going about, which probably doesn't help matters. But yeah, I think Kilmarnock probably had the slightly better opportunities in the first half. Vassell had a header which kind of just goes wide, and he also had one which he forced Shamal George to make a save at his near post. But that's really all you could write of note in the first half. Real lack of quality on the ball. There was only maybe a couple of times where we got the ball down and worked our way through the thirds. And to be honest, a couple of times worked ourselves into decent kind of crossing positions, and it was just that final ball kind of lacked a little bit of quality. But yeah, it was a really drab first half. And to be honest, I don't think the second half had as many chances as the first, which tells you everything. But we'll come on to it, might as well, because there's not a great deal in terms of chances and quality in the game. But the biggest chance falls to Bruce Anderson. We win a penalty. I do think, well, again, I'll come on to talk about it, but I do think our subs were a bit more positive this week. And I think that kind of had a little bit of impact in the game. And I think we probably looked the more likely to nick something. And, we worked ourselves into position. Curtis Guthrie's had an initial overhead kick. I think a lot of people thought that was the handball that was given, but I think that actually hit Stuart Findlay square in the face. It's actually the follow-up shot from Bruce Anderson where Findlay's got his arm raised above his head and it's flicked off his arm and gone over the bar. I think that's actually the handball that's been given, and you can't complain. It's a handball. He's in an unnatural position, and my gripe with the penalty is Sean Kelly came off at half time injured, and we obviously know Sean's the current designated penalty taker. He's scored 3 of his last 3. For me, it didn't seem like we knew who was going to take a penalty when Sean's come off the pitch, because Io Obalai was holding the ball round about the penalty spot. I mean, no, Io's hit a fair few penalties for us in the past. Obviously missed his last couple. And then Bruce comes and takes the ball. I don't have any issues with your number 9 wanting to go and take a penalty and add to his goal tally. You would expect any striker worth his money would come and do that. But also, Bruce has missed his last penalty when we played Clyde earlier in the season. And, the manager was very critical of Bruce missing the target from his penalty. I almost feel like the manager is really harsh on Bruce at times when it comes to chances that he maybe misses compared to some of the other players in the squad. But I do think it's the most criminal thing you can do with a penalty, which is miss the target completely and not at least force the keeper to make a save. And Bruce has hit the outside of the post, and granted it still wouldn't have ended this kind of drought of scoring from open play, but I felt we desperately needed to get 3 points at the weekend. I really do. You look at St Johnstone picking up another win at the weekend there, and in a game which nobody deserved to win, if we'd managed to nick something, I just feel the confidence boost the players would get from scoring a goal, ending that run of defeats, ending that run of games without scoring, I just think could have been so monumental for our season. And given we've got 2 incredibly tough games coming up, away at Aberdeen and then away at Celtic Park, you struggle to imagine that we might score in those particular games. As I say, there's the positive that you've ended that run of defeats, but for me, in terms of the quality of the performance, again, just the lack of identity when we've got possession of the ball, it's just a recurring theme week on week when we come on and do this podcast. And I struggle to see where a lot of the positives come from other than a clean sheet and not losing the game, to be brutally honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely spot on with that. I think one of the main takeaways that I seen from the kind of the post-match interview as well was mentioning the conditions. I think it was Davey said something along the lines of, the fans don't quite understand like how windy it was and stuff like that. Sure, but at the same time, we're not even trying to play any sort of football. If the conditions aren't working in the favour for hopeless long balls in the air, then why are we continuing to persist with it? And in all honesty, that's exactly all that we're doing. I mean, first minute of the game, we work the ball down the right hand side, and a chance falls to Io Obolai of all people, We then don't really do that again for the rest of the half. I think it's saying later on in the game, you kind of get players like kind of going forward, and that's where we end up getting a penalty from. But yeah, like the way that we're playing right now, just it is completely to be nullifying the opposition, not to give anything up cheaply. Maybe that's kind of the plan to try and become solid again, and then we'll start to become, play a little bit more football. But it's absolutely horrendous at the time, and you're talking about the starting 11 in that as well. Watching that there, our midfield doesn't get on the ball at all, and I do feel sorry for the likes of, your Jason Holtz and your Shinnies, and I feel sorry for Shinnie in particular because there's so many times that he's trying to bring the ball down, keep possession of the ball. He brings it down, passes it back to somebody, and then it just more likely or not it just gets humps right back up the park. And I think we've seen a lot of things in the news recently about Derek Adams talking about, the quality of the Scottish League. And in all honesty, watching us this season, can I disagree with him? Not really, because it's absolutely horrendous. In saying that though, Kilmarnock weren't any better. I think that they, maybe used the ball a lot better, but there was just kind of a lot of crosses that they were putting into the box that we, thankfully were able to deal with. But I don't think that they either deserve to do anything to win the game either, which, I think that they'll be probably thinking is quite disappointing coming to Livingston, bottom of the league, and, not being able to do that. But yeah, it's just very much another kind of drab performance. There's nothing to really get excited by. And the penalty miss just kind of sums up our luck at the moment, to be honest. As you're saying, yeah, if there's players who are kind of debating on the pitch who's going to be taking the ball to take the penalty, then that's always a kind of negative sign. And I think as we all seen, Ayo and Bruce kind of discussing that kind of thing, I think everybody's kind of just got negative opinions that it's unlikely that we're going to score, combined with our goal scoring luck as of late. But yeah, there's not really kind of much more to say about the game. It's just another kind of poor kind of showing. The football on show was lacking quality, and hey, at least we drew though, right?
Yeah, kind of to touch on a point you made, you're right in what you're saying, and again, the manager kind of touched on it. We did defend our box pretty well in terms of Kilmarnock didn't have a abundance of chances through the game. I mentioned those couple that fell to Vassell in the first half, and other than that, distinct lack of quality from Kilmarnock as well. I did think Danny Armstrong looked a kind of constant threat when he did get on the ball, but I do think we dealt with him very well out on that side. Penner's had another solid showing, in my opinion. He got sponsors man of the match as well, and I think that kind of sums up that he'd managed to keep Armstrong fairly quiet throughout the game. There are a degree of positives to take, but you're clutching at straws a little bit when you're talking about these positives. One of the things I'm going to give the manager a bit of credit for, because I've been very critical the last few weeks in terms of his substitutions that he's made in games, and it's been all very like for like or quite negative, some of the substitutions. Whilst I actually think at the weekend there he's made substitutions to try and have a little bit more of a go and add a little bit more attacking quality into the game. Bruce Anderson coming on for Sean Kelly, going to a two up top with Scott Pittman kind of playing in behind. I think it was Guthrie and Anderson at the time. Montano coming on for Shinnie as well. Again, I think Christian showed a couple of glimpses of what you miss from him, which is that kind of direct running with the ball, driving at teams, committing players. There was one incident, albeit he kind of fluffed his lines a little bit at the tail end, but he beat two or three players just by picking the ball up from deep and having a go and running at somebody. I think we've really, really missed that from Christian at times this season. And then Stephen Kelly coming on from Guthrie, that saw Newbley go up top with Bruce Anderson as well, with Stephen Kelly kind of playing in as that 10 at that point, and pitch dropped a little bit deeper. So I do think the manager made substitutions in the game which were positive. If I'm being overly critical, I don't think some of those substitutions should have had to have been made, because I do believe some of these players should be starting the game regardless, the likes of Anderson, the likes of Stephen Kelly, which I've spoke about. But I need to be fair and say that his substitutions were positive this week, in terms of, I do think he made an attempt to try and alter the game and try and show a little bit more attacking impetus in the game. So I'm going to be fair and give him the credit in that regard.
Sure. I, it's I get where you're coming from. It's just, I think the fans of us can continuously be frustrated that we're not seeing, some of our better ball players in that beginning from the start. Especially with, the kind of way that we've been playing recently. But yeah, it's just like a difficult one, and it's not a game that's going to stay long in the memory, is it? We're not going to look back and be like, oh, remember that 0-0 draw against Kilmarnock in the season. But yeah, I'm not really sure what else to kind of cover here, Ewan.
I'll pick up on what you said about Derek Adams. Just, I'm almost certain Derek Adams made our dud 11. So the hypocrisy of Derek Adams having a go at the quality of Scottish football when he's arguably one of the worst midfielders I've seen at Livingston, I do think is quite ironic. But to be fair, he has a valid point, having watched their games recently, and that game in particular at the weekend, it lacked a lot of quality in the game. And to be honest, regardless of the penalty miss, I think that game had 0-0 written all over it, and it was worthy of a 0-0. But when you have such a glaring opportunity to go and nick a game that's been devoid of so much quality, especially the sort of run of results that we've been on, it's a massive, massive opportunity missed by ourselves, I think, at the weekend to go and nick 3 points. And as I say, just put an proper end to this run of results. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Starner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
The Lionesses would face up against league leaders Queen's Park in their final game of 2023. It would end in a narrow 1-0 defeat for our ladies. Angus, what were your thoughts on the game? Seems like maybe a little bit unfortunate, and another closely fought encounter against a pretty decent Queen's Park side.
More so the other way, to be honest, Ewan. To be honest with you, that is maybe as comfortable a loss we've probably had this season, I would say, Ewan. Full credit to Queen's Park. I think that they played pretty well, and considering their goal scoring form, I think that I guess that's maybe one positive for us to look at, is that we've managed to keep the score kind of down. Yeah, I don't know what kind of happened there on Sunday. I don't think we really kind of competed well enough, to be honest. I think that Queen's Park were kind of doing all the kind of the right things. They were winning the ball back, they were fighting for each other, they were recycling the ball. I don't think that we did that nearly as much. I think we struggled to keep possession of the ball whenever we did get it. It was a lot of balls that were kind of going over the top, and we were just kind of giving possession straight back. And with that, Queen's Park were just kind of coming back down our throats. And it meant that our back line had a very, very busy kind of afternoon in terms of tracking runs and stuff like that. And going into that first half and then going into half time, I think it's incredible that we did end up going in 0-0, to be honest with you. There was quite a good number of chances that Queen's Park had, but just sort of fluffed their lines in the end. I think that the closest one was the Lassie Callahan went through on goal and she hit the post, and we've got away with one there as well. For ourselves, in terms of that first half, there's not really too many kind of chances I can think of, to be honest with you. We had a couple of corners, but nothing that we really created many goal scoring opportunities from. And I think that I think this was just the difference between the two teams, was that whenever Queen's Park got the ball, they were patient with it. They wanted to work it. It wasn't just kind of wanted to get the ball forward as quickly as we could. And I think that for ourselves, that's the biggest trap that we fell into, is that I think that there seemed to be an urgency to kind of get the ball as far forward as quick as possible, but it wasn't sticking to any of our players, and it was just kind of giving up possession needlessly. In all honesty, it was kind of like a similar performance to what the men's have done recently, to be honest. It's been a lot of just giving up possession needlessly. I guess at the same time, Queen's Park are a good team. They press you hard and stuff like that as well. They've got a very, very strong midfield. I think in this league is probably one of the biggest things that differentiates some of the better teams from the not so good teams, is that if you can control that midfield, keep the ball well in there, a couple of nice touches and stuff like that, and actually progress your attacks up the park, then that'll do yourself the world of good. But yeah, going into half time 0-0, I think we suffered another injury in the midfield, which meant Courtney McAvoy had to come off for Raywin Murphy. So you're probably still talking about not having your fully combative midfield in there as well to kind of combat, one of the league's best sides. But it was kind of just more of the same, to be honest with you, Euan, that if there was going to be one team who was going to score the next kind of couple of goals, it was Queen's Park. We did have one opportunity where, Jens put the ball into the back of the net, but she was deemed to be offside. Unfortunately, that straight after that is when Queen's Park go up the park and Lassie Callahan doesn't make any mistake this time. And, the goal was always just coming. It was, you can't allow like a team who are free scoring at the top of the league that many chances on goal and not expect it to be taken. But at the end of the day, I don't think we can have any qualms as to, the result of the game there. Yeah, I think that the back line had a strong game regardless of that. I think they were kept very, very busy, but I think we'll be quite disappointed by the fact that we've kept Queen's Park out of the game for so long, but just not really carved anything out attacking wise for ourselves. I think that maybe that's kind of like a missed opportunity to really test the team who's sitting at the top of the league there. Maybe just an off day for us in terms of keeping the ball ourselves.
I've not been able to make it down and watch the girls quite as often as I have in previous seasons, but the glimpses I have seen of them this year, they have been a lot better with the ball than what I've seen in probably the previous couple of seasons prior to promotion this year. So that would probably be a little bit of a disappointing aspect, is that they've not shown a bit more almost confidence on the ball. You can understand it when you are playing against the better sides, that it becomes maybe a little bit more difficult to play that style of football. Was there maybe that approach to it, that Queen's Park are kind of sitting quite comfortably at the top of the league at this moment in time? Was there maybe that approach that you're playing a little bit more safety first and playing percentage football?
Yeah, possibly so. I think knowing that the threats that they have, like the last Ellie Kane, 20 goals this season, which is something like 8 more than like anybody else in the league, which is quite remarkable and stuff like that. They've got a good couple of wide players as well, so perhaps trying to maintain like a distance from them to our goal. I think playing on like the bigger pitch and that as well maybe didn't kind of go in our favour this time. In all honesty, we're probably used to being the one who have got a bit more of an advantage by playing at our home ground. But I think that the spaces that the Queen's Park midfield and that were able to operate in, we weren't quite switched on to like most of their kind of runners and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that there's maybe, especially as it went into the second half, there was maybe a little bit more of a get out, backs to the wall kind of thing, where we're, trying to keep away from our goal as much as possible. Yeah, it's just kind of an interesting one. I think that a bit more application kind of in that middle of the park, kind of tracking runners. I think there's quite a lot of times we're watching the game and I could see like Jen, who was, kind of playing as at number 10, like kind of like looking around, pointing to players, being like, come take this man, come take this player, that as well. I think there's maybe a little bit of like players being dragged across like kind of positions like the lassie Ellie Kane, who is like the number 10 for them, very, very busy running about the park and everything like that, dragging players away and stuff like that if she's not looking to get on the ball. And I think that was just creating a multitude of gaps in the park against us and stuff like that as well. You can clearly see that they're a well-drilled side, and they've picked up 2 1-0 wins in the last couple of weeks against Kilmarnock and against us, where they've kind of had to bide their time, I guess, and not get too frustrated. And I think that showed like their quality in the end, where even though they went, the best part of 60 minutes without scoring, they didn't get frustrated. They kept on doing all the right things and stuff like that. And yeah, they eventually got their chance and put it away. But Yeah, I think for ourselves, not one of our better showings of the season. I think even though we've lost to like Queens Park and Kilmarnock before, I think we had chances in those games, and we showed a bit more, on the ball. Whereas I think here was a little bit more disappointing that we were unable to try and string like a couple of passes together. I think there's a lot of we're getting the ball where we felt that need to kind of go forward straight away. I don't know if there was like an urgency to try and get back into the game that just maybe forced a little bit of, which has diminished the quality a bit, to be fair. I think we've been desperate to try and get that goal back where instead of just kind of keeping the ball, recycling it, working it to a better angle and stuff like that, that we've, hit it forward first time and we've just not had the legs up there to kind of, maintain it and get on the ball.
It's obviously a disappointing way to end the calendar year, albeit it's been a very positive 2023 for our women's side with promotion and a really good start to life in SWPL too. There was obviously a little bit of coverage in the matchday programme at the weekend for the women's side as well, which I know you were heavily involved with, Angus. It's good to give them that kind of platform as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. When Holfie said that they were planning on doing that, it was, great to hear. And yeah, to be able to showcase our team was, excellent. And I hope that a lot of people who were reading it enjoyed all the kind of pieces, the different pieces that were into there. And, hopefully it could be a feature for the programs going forward. But yeah, as you say, disappointing end to that game there, but let's take nothing away from what a fantastic year it's been. As you said, winning promotion from the championship is, obviously the greatest moment in the club's kind of tenure so far. And then yeah, it can't be understated that we've had a really good start so far, and we're talking about a performance that's coming against the best team in the league, and the one who's likely to go up. I think there's something about 9 points clearing that already. The league form has been largely very good. We're sitting fourth in the table in our first season up. Only a matter of points away from both Boroughmuir and Kilmarnock. So plenty to be happy for. Stuff to work on in 2024, which I'm sure Mike and the team are going to be looking at, and hopefully it's going to be an even more successful year next year. Next up, the Lions make the trip north to take on Aberdeen at Pittodrie. Euan, we're going to smash them, aren't we? Put cricket sounds in this wee gap here.
I just I don't see where we're getting a result from, to be honest. However, when going and having a little look into Aberdeen so far this season, they do have the second worst home record in the division. It's
Behind us.
ahead of us.
Ahead of us, sorry.
We've got the
Yeah.
worst home
Ahead of
record.
us.
But it's 2 wins, 2 draws, 3 defeats at home, 8 goals scored, 8 conceded. So it's been very kind of low scoring games up at Pittodrie this campaign, which if you compare it to last year, especially when Goodwin was in charge, they were pretty free scoring, in particular at home. I've spoke about this before, but Aberdeen fans hounded Derek McInnes out the door for his style of football, and I always thought it was a very knee-jerk reaction giving Barry Robson the job, and I don't see a better quality side under Barry Robson. I think they play very much a McInnes style of football. It's all quite direct and being compact and difficult to beat, playing a back three for the vast majority of this season. The boy Rubizic, Garteman and Jensen being that kind of back three that's predominantly played this year. But look, Aberdeen have players that can hurt you at the top end of the park. Bojan Miłoski's got 6 goals in the league this year. Jamie McGrath, I think it's been a decent signing for them. He's got 4 goals as well. And then you've got kind of Duke, albeit I think Duke's been a bit hot or cold this season. However, he's still produced 3 assists for them over the course of the campaign in the league. So they do have players at the top end of the park that can hurt you. But there's discontent at Aberdeen. I think they've been very competitive in their European games, but domestically, I think they've been incredibly poor. And I do think the manager's under a lot of pressure. I don't know what it is with Barry Robson. I can't take them. I find some of his post-match, it all comes across really bitter, constantly very bitter. Like the start of the season when they played ourselves, he was talking about how you can't play football on that pitch, and then they went and played at Stirling Albion on a pitch that's the groundsman has been groundsman of the year in the UK for I don't know how many years, and he was complaining about the grass surface. It just seems like there's a constant moan that he has to have in games. And I watched the League Cup final at the weekend there, and I'm talking about Aberdeen having a real good goal. I struggled to picture what game he was watching because I wouldn't have said Aberdeen had a right good go at Rangers. Thought they were actually quite negative in how they set up for a one-off cup tie against what I would say is one of the weaker Rangers teams I've seen in recent years.
I think that's one of the interesting aspects as well, is that following the game, he came out and proper bigged up Rangers and were saying about like, oh, that's like a proper team and stuff like that. But as you have just said, that's not a Rangers team that I don't think that we should be massively impressed by or fearful of. To be honest with you, I think that you can have a go at them. I know that they're going off topic, like talking about Rangers now, like as opposed to 2 weeks ago, you would hardly believe it's the same team with considering how much of a world beater they are. But yeah, it seemed quite defeatist in that way, where he kind of came out afterwards and it was like, oh well, what did you expect? And it's like that's a really, really odd thing for a manager to come out and say after a 1-0 loss where you've not really applied yourself too much.
Yeah, and as I say, I do think Barry Robson's under a massive bit of pressure. However, obviously their European campaigns now come to a close. We saw last year how Hearts kind of struggled with that initial midweek Sunday kind of fixture schedule, and they did pick up a little bit after exiting Europe last year as well. So I wonder if that'll be the same for Aberdeen, because I do think they've got better players than their style of football and some of the results domestically would suggest. As I mentioned, they've got two guys at the top end of the park who are going to get you goals throughout the season, and the likes of Miovski and Duke. They've got creative players like the likes of Clarkson in the middle of the park. However, I don't think he's had as big of effect as he did last season for them. But I do think this game has all the hallmarks of the first goal could be so important, because I know what Pittodrie's like as a ground. The fans they expect, and if they're not getting what they're expecting, they are quick to turn on the side. And it's one of those grounds you need to go to and probably have a degree of being difficult to play against early doors. But I feel if you get that opening goal in the game, I know this is me talking absolute insanity, talking about us scoring a goal, Angus. I know it's very difficult to believe after 686 minutes without one. But if you can get the first goal in the game, all the pressure goes on to Aberdeen. All the pressure goes on to Aberdeen. All the pressure is on Aberdeen, really, given their league position at this moment in time. Obviously, you'd think we have a degree of pressure, but there is an expectancy that we're going to be at the bottom end of the table season on season. Aberdeen are the home side. There'll be an expectation that they should come and win this game comfortably. And if we can nick the first goal in this game, I just think you can create a slightly toxic atmosphere that makes it very difficult for those players to play. And you can sit a bit more defensively in a shape and try and defend, because I kind of mentioned this last week. If you take out our games with the Old Firm this year, our defensive record's not that bad over the course of this season. So it is a case of we just need to have a little threat. If we can create an opportunity, if we can nick a goal and just put all the pressure onto Aberdeen, who knows what could happen. But I am talking absolute insanity when I am mentioning us creating an opportunity and scoring a goal. I do appreciate that's very hard to believe at this moment in time if you've watched us for the last 2 to 3 months. But I do think the first goal is going to be so important in this game, because I think if Aberdeen get the first goal, I do think they'll go and win the game comfortably based on our kind of recent run of results.
I think it's safe to say that if Aberdeen take the lead in the first half, they've won the game. If we can get to half time 0-0 and continue to frustrate their team and continue to frustrate their support, then yeah, who knows what can happen. I think Pittodrie must be one of the last places we actually scored a penalty, to be fair. I think that's going back to Jason Holt, which is, say that's probably like the 16th most recent penalty or something as well. So it's like
I think you're doing Sean Kelly a right disservice. He scored his last 3, in fairness to the big man. But yes, it's one of the rare occasions we have scored a penalty in the last 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah, well, I guess it's hard to kind of get excited for this one. I mean, talking there, like, yeah, was starting to think about trying to go up to the game tomorrow. The way that the buses and all of that run and stuff like that, you couldn't get there. So for a match day, it's basically costing about 100 quid. You know, this kind of close to Christmas and stuff like that. What are your kind of thoughts on the kind of festive schedule in that regard, Ewan? Where for example, for us, we've got two away games in the space of what, a couple of days and stuff like that. Two of the bigger clubs in the country where it's the ticket prices are for like an adult are basically around the 30 quid kind of mark. I think there's a couple of like people kind of speaking about kind of the festive break and all of that where we have that winter break in January. Could we do with like a bigger one to avoid this kind of fixture congestion as well as helping supporters out for the financial side?
I think it's absolute insanity the number of games that we play in December. I think it's 7 games you've got in one of your worst months of the year, and I think there's a lack of consideration given to supporters at what's a difficult time for a lot of them financially. And yeah, this game had been postponed obviously from a couple of months back. The SPFL going and wedging it in 5 days before Christmas, for a midweek, I just think it's so stupid. So stupid. The thought process behind that. You've got January, February, March, April. You've got plenty of time to fit this game in and to wedge it in. Now, as I say, I think it's really stupid and a lack of consideration given to supporters, if I'm totally honest with you. But it fits in with the tradition of us having a winter midweek game at Pittodrie. That is almost a staple in the Livingston FC fixture calendar for the last 6 years. So it would be rude not to have that continued away fixture up at Pittodrie, getting a gale blowing on you by the north sea wind through that gap at the beach end. I wouldn't want to spend a December midweek any other way, Angus. I'll be honest with you. But yeah, kind of looking at the game, obviously the last couple of weeks we've set up, I would say quite defensively in terms of how we've started with our starting 11. It's consisted of kind of four central midfielders in there, not maybe our most attack-minded of central midfielders that we have available in the squad. Can you see us setting up any differently from that, especially with
No,
the game being away from home?
nope. I think we're still going to see Joe Newbley at right wing back. We're still going to see, Sean Kelly's fit. He's going to be in there. If Sean Kelly's not fit, is the likes of a Singari going to come in there instead? Wouldn't be surprised at that. I can't say that we're going to do anything else. Maybe Montano might come in. That might push Joel Newbley back up the park. If it's the exact same kind of lineup that started on Saturday, though, Ewan, would I be shocked? It's the same formula we've been trying over and over and over again. We got a wee bit of a boost by getting a point there. Is that going to be maybe more ammunition to kind of stick with this team? I don't know, but yeah, quite frankly, I don't see many changes happening here.
I agree with you. I don't see a great deal of changes, but if I was a manager looking at the last couple of games, where I think we've looked at our most threatening is when we've actually gone to two up top. When somebody's either played alongside Curtis Guthrie or later on in the game at the weekend where it was Joel and Bruce kind of playing up through the middle as a two, I'd be inclined to go and play two up. Aberdeen have three very physical centre halves. I think it would be a really tough job for one centre forward up there against them. So for me, I would try and have somebody try to pick off scraps of the likes of a Guthrie. So I would get Anderson in there and just play as maybe with 110 in there, rather than we've consistently kind of played almost two inverted tens a lot of this season. So I'd be quite inclined to go two up to give somebody playing off Guthrie a little bit closer to him and working in and around him. But do I see it happening realistically? No. But from an attacking sense, I think that's where we have looked our most threatening in the last two games, is when we have had that kind of better outball in terms of somebody being able to play off a Guthrie winning. And to be fair to Guthrie, I think he's done as much as he can in recent games in terms of winning his flick-ons, bringing the ball down. So let's move on to predictions for Aberdeen then. What are you going for?
No, it's a staple. It's a 2-0 to Aberdeen.
Yeah, I'm copying you. 2-0 Aberdeen. I can't see where our nils end at this moment in time. We get a
I
penalty
think
at the weekend and can't even
I
hit the
think
target.
Andy summed it up on Twitter quite well just by calling us Livingston nil.
But obviously, the games do get a little bit easier after our trip to Pittodrie. It's just a jaunt over to Celtic Park to take on the current champions. But Celtic are
Despite
in
they're
crisis.
floundering, they're absolutely floundering. They don't get what's going on right now.
Celtic are in crisis, Angus. They have
It's
lost a
it
game of
is
football
it's
and lost
abs-
another one before that.
it's absolutely wild that that Rangers team could end up top of the league by winning their games in hand. That is remarkable, and I do understand with Celtic fans that there has been a clear regression from under Ange Postecoglou. I don't think that they should have taken Brendan Rodgers back to begin with. I don't think that that was a necessary move. But as you see with the kind of the Celtic board and how they, the Champions League money that's came in, the player sales and all of that, and they just kind of have got. You're looking at some of their teams this season, Ewan, and they're mediocre at best. I mean, the fact that like Mikey Johnson's coming back into the squad, I mean, how many chances is he on to try and prove himself? The likes of Liam Scales has came in and done, to be fair, became one of their best players this year, which is quite remarkable. There seems to be a weird feeling around the likes of David Turnbull, who although gets, good numbers in terms of stats and stuff like that, a lot of the fans don't quite like him. But then they're having to rely on, a lot of players, like Stephen Welsh has came back into the fray recently and stuff like that. And it's really quite an interesting scenario where they've went from having, one of the hottest managers in the world of football, who's then went to Tottenham, and then they've brought in, a good name who's, had success there before. But it all just seems like something's really, really off with Celtic at the moment. My heart, of course, bleeds for them. It must be so hard having, been the best team for the past, 12 years or something like that, and then, go for like a little dip, even though still being head and shoulders the richest team in the country and stuff like that. Yeah, it's such a shame. You don't want to see it. You don't want to see it.
Yeah, it's obviously Postecoglou's his style of football it was exceptional to watch. It was a brilliant brand of football. If you were a supporter going to watch it, I could absolutely understand why you become attached to the guy. Obviously, he's moved on to Tottenham, and they've brought in Brendan Rodgers, who, let's be frank, he had a domestic invincible season, won two trebles, in fact, won 7 out of 7 trophies when he was at the football club. So it's not like he wasn't a success when he was there previously. But I think where the pressure's fallen on Brendan Rodgers is there's two aspects to it. Is one, the manner in which he left Celtic part of the way through the season. I think that's a big factor. So he's obviously got a lot of fans have not forgiven that because it's still fairly recent, that exit from Celtic. But I also think the other part of it is Rodgers has got a style of football that's very possession based. It's a lot of a much slower build up. It's very, very deliberate in terms of building their way through the thirds, playing out from the back. Whilst I do think Postecoglou's was a lot more high tempo, it was a lot quicker. And I think based on the fact a lot of the players that are in the building are Postecoglou's signings and tailored to the way he plays, I don't think it gets the best out of some players, the likes of Maeda, Kyogo. I don't think they've hit the same heights that they've hit in the previous couple of seasons that they did under Postecoglou. But I mean, looking at the numbers of some of their players, Matt O'Reilly's having a remarkable season. He's got 9 goals plus 5 assists in there. You mentioned David Turnbull there, who's got 7 goals this season, despite the fact there's still a heap of criticism with him. Kyogo's got 6, Palma and Orv both got 5 goals each, so they've got plenty of. It's not like they've got a lack of options there that will grab them a goal if required. Palma's probably the main replacement for the likes of Jota, and I do think there's a really good player in there with Palma. I think he will develop into a good asset for Celtic. He's got 6 assists this season as well. So it's not like they've not got options available, but I almost feel like Rodgers is, I think it's almost deliberate that he's bringing in a lot of these players from the cold at Celtic to almost force the board's hand into giving him resources to go and bring in his own players. I get that impression that it's very, very deliberate from Rodgers what he's doing. But it's a very risky game because, as you say, the last couple of results have brought Rangers right back into the frame in terms of the title race. If they go and win their games in hand, that's them top of the league going into potential massive Old Firm at New Year. So it's a very risky game if that's what he's going for. But looking at Celtic at home this season, 9 games at home, 6 wins, 2 draws, 1 defeat, 2 draws coming against St Johnstone. It was a 0-0. Motherwell was a late equaliser, and then obviously the defeat at the weekend there to Hearts. So they've not, Celtic Park's not been quite the same fortress. And again, looking at their kind of stats, they're not as free scoring at Celtic Park as they maybe have been in the previous few seasons. And speaking to some pals who are Celtic fans, my boss as well is a season ticket holder, the chances are we're going to go in there and try and camp in and play across their 18-yard line. I'm fully expecting a performance similar to what we played at Tynecastle. And his words were, that's exactly what we can't play against just now, which is teams with that kind of low block and just camping in front of us. So, look, I'm not saying we've got an opportunity. I fully expect Celtic will have far too much quality.
You're telling me there's a chance?
Nah, and I'm sure their quality will shine through in the end. But again, it's one of these ones where there's discontent there, and the longer you can get into the game with a nil in the Celtic column, the more pressure builds on that group of players. But I can't see how we keep a team that, as I mentioned, as much as there's talks of crisis at Celtic Park, they are still top of the league at the end of the day, and they've got an absolute abundance of quality on their side, and I just can't see how we can last 90 minutes keeping them out, if I'm totally honest with you. But it's a kind of similar one. If you were to go there and nick the first goal, again, I'm talking absolute insanity when I mention it, but you never know. You never know. But yeah, I think it's a really tall order regardless.
I think, yeah, as you're saying, the game plan's got to be there and get their fangs to turn against them because they are a very overreactive bunch at this moment. I think following that game against Feyenoord where they won a dead rubber game, and there's a lot of fans I'm seeing on Twitter and that saying about, oh, this is going to kickstart the season. This is like exactly what we needed and all that. They won a game where it didn't matter. Like, in all honesty, like they criticised other teams for celebrating much like worse and all of that, to then go and lose to Hearts, and then suddenly it's that 180 where it goes from, oh yeah, this is the kickstart, this is how good we can be, to, oh, everything's crap, everybody's rubbish and stuff like that. It's so over the top, and I think that
it's the thing at the Old Firm, Angus, you're one game from a crisis all the time.
It's spot on. Like, and have Celtic been great this season? No, but in terms of like that, like as you say, it is only one bad result away from being, oh, we're absolutely great to, oh, we're absolutely rubbish. And yeah, there needs to be a bit more analysis from them with that. But in saying that, I fully expect them to come out and show against us that what they're truly about. I don't know. Are they playing on Wednesday as well?
No, it's just Rangers actually play one of their games in hand, so it'll put a little bit more pressure on them going into this game if Rangers do manage to close the gap.
As I say, like if we're in the Premiership, I can't imagine there's been too many times where Celtic have dropped points in 3 consecutive games. So just by like the law of averages, the fact of us going to Celtic Park, I don't think there's been many times that Celtic have played consecutive home games and dropped points as well in recent seasons. So yeah, the law of averages probably aren't looking good for us here, Euan. I think that's going to be a defining factor, in all honesty, more so than anything else. Just that, maths. But any predictions for this trip to Celtic Park?
I expect another very defensive lineup for it, albeit in these games against Celtic and Rangers, you can forgive it a little bit more when you do go and set up that way because, as you talk about the law of averages, if you go there and try and play open and expansive, you are just going to get picked apart. So you do need to be very cautious when you go to these places and pick your battles almost. And I'm sure that will be the case when we go to Celtic Park at the weekend. But yeah, I'll go for a comfortable 3-0 to Celtic.
Just to avoid us copying each other's predictions all the time, I'll go for the over, and I'll go for 4-0 to Celtic.
God, we're an absolute ray of sunshine these days on this podcast, aren't we? But by the way, and being serious, see now that I've predicted defeats almost every week, I'm picking up more and more points on our little prediction league that we have between us, Angus. So like, I think I've cost myself the last few seasons by being so bleeding positive all the time. It's going to be a very tall order this week. It's two incredibly tough games, two tough venues to go to. Here's hoping the players have gained a little bit of confidence from ending that run of results, that consecutive losses, and can try and pick up something to really, really kickstart our season, but it's going to be a tall order. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. We really appreciate you tuning in every week and we'd love to hear your feedback. You can leave us a review on iTunes or drop us a message on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, so simply search Talk Livi to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there, and any shares or likes are always appreciated. All of our episodes are available on all the usual podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, and we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week, and thanks to all our listeners for tuning in as always. And let's hope for a better week following the Lothian's finest football team to get us in the festive spirit.
Livingston, oh Livingston, realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, to the Premier.